Welcome to the You Person Podcast, a deep dive into how a new way of knowing is developing holistic, innovative leaders at all levels of the organization and changing the way business does business. I'm your host, James Tuznia, and a big shout out to Lindsay Sterling for our highly evocative theme music, Between Twilight.
The other piece that I would need to follow up on this is now tell us how it is that the You Person operating system will give you the willingness to see the wave that's coming, the less certainty with your certainty, more willingness to be aware, like to actually talk a little bit about the better way, the innovation, the unitive, and the leadership, because you're talking about it as the enterprise. The enterprise needs to shift. So how do enterprises shift? How do they shift? And how does the operating system support that, encourage that, welcome that, invite that, is the tool for that shifting of the enterprise? And you did touch on it when you talked about leaders who are too certain of their certainty.
One of the ways we were talking about a 6.0 leader in a 5.0 society or 5.0 world, which is at certain cultures are now talking about the world is making that shift to what is being termed Society 5.0. We could say that one of the ways we're talking about is being a 6.0 leader to steward the movement to a 5.0 society is that it's the leader then has a certain way of looking at things, a certain level of view, and that might include a unitive view and a sense of that not being so that one certainty is let's say the innovative aspect of being a 6.0 leader. So there's a level of altitude of view, I guess one could say, that includes being open enough to see that there is a new way that's required, not just it would be nice, it's required, that has a unitive structure of mind that allows you to be present to the wave that's actually moving through, that would transcend the surface wave that is apparent. I'm not sure it's the best way to talk about it, though. I don't know.
Well, if we take the example that we were just talking about in terms of Shell Oil and the judgment that was put on them, Shell Oil is made up of human beings. What makes it possible to change their mind, to create a different pathway, is the human beings that run Shell Oil. Now, if they're going to stay in a kind of leadership that is working within Society 4.0, it will have its own kind of impact. A 6.0 leader, and what we've said is things are changing. The rules of engagement are changing. Society wants it to change because they're now feeling the effects of climate change with firestorms and hurricanes and etc., superstorms. A 6.0 leader who has the thinking to be able to step back from what's happening and see a future and see how they could innovate and move to accomplish, let's say, 45% reduction in carbon emissions. It is completely within possibility and making it so. Human beings have the ability to do that. The big key is to change your thinking. Well, to change your thinking, you actually need a different operating system. And so a 6.0 leader is one coming from a holistic and unitive place that can look at the whole ecosystem and that can see a future that wants to happen from seeing the whole ecosystem. A 6.0 leader needs to be able to cultivate these levels of perspective, these structures of thinking, because it's in there that the solution for the future that wants to happen around, let's say, climate change and the big oil companies, something different could emerge, but it will take human beings saying, I'm going to aspire to a different level of thinking. I'm going to open up my awareness. I'm going to be able to see the whole ecosystem, and I'm going to make a choice to change. And I don't know how right now we're going to get to 45% reduction. But I'm going to accept that court's judgment. I'm going to pool the whole ecosystem and let's see what we can do. Would be a 6.0 leader of a way of approaching it. It's unitive. We're in this together. It's not Shell Oil's got to fight for its own profitability when we're facing climate change. That's like, how can you keep thinking that? given what these group of people brought a suit against Shell about. So it's asking for a different level of leadership. It's asking for a new structure of mind and a different way to perceive what's happening from a more holistic, innovative, co-creative space.
And I might point out, in terms of different structure of mind that you were pointing to, Jill, is that there's a level that you pointed to where we're all in this together. And then the different structure of mind might point to unitive being non-binary. Yeah. Non-binary parsing distinctions of difference as correct or incorrect, as an example, and good and bad, and right and wrong. So then when you're saying in terms of what a company can do and what's possible, the binary assessment that we can do it or we can't do it, or I ask you about something about what your company's doing and you're saying, well, you're saying I'm bad and wrong, and we're saying we're good and right, or you're saying that we can or we can't do it. All that kind of binary processing can stop the momentum of considering possibility. So then as a 6.0 leader, if you're coming from a non-binary structure of mind, you won't get lost in the quagmire, in the weeds of, I can do it, I can't do it, that would be good for the company, that would be bad for the company. All of the kind of binary things of, this is what's correct about what scientifically we can do. It's correct, it's incorrect, it's bad, it's good, it's good for our company, it's bad for our company. If you can transcend all of that binary constructs for even the conversation, if you can come from the whole, and so if we say unitive, non-binary, then what's the conversation that is outside of the conversation of what we can do, can't do, correct, incorrect, good, bad, all of that, which then allows for a real conversation of possibility. That then can come back to what was formerly said about what you could or couldn't do, or what is correct or incorrect, or quote unquote scientifically possible or not possible, not possible, correct, incorrect. Right. So when we say a unitive structure of mind, we're saying there's a conversation one can have where it's both and neither and something else. And all of those might be something we could talk about, so that we could get outside of what was previously thought to be possible.
Americans have traditionally, I can say it a couple of ways. Human beings have traditionally been inventive and innovative. If you look at the beginning of the 20th century, so many things were invented, not from this can't, good or bad, right or wrong. It was needing to step outside of something. What we're saying is, rather than those just being moments of genius for people who were inventing or creating things, what if it's a way of thinking? What if we're going to move to a whole new way of thinking as human beings that would open up the possibility of the kind of life we're seeing we could live? It is going to require that we let go of binary, that we let go of certainty, and that we explore this place that we're pointing to. That's what we've been doing with some of the companies we're working with right now. And the things that they would have stopped at, the things that they would have said, that's impossible, are the very things that we've used to open the next doorway and open the next doorway and open the next doorway. But it took this thing that Daniel's pointing to about a non-binary structure of mind, of letting go of the certainty you have about this is just how it is, and being willing to step into that new place. Human beings have that naturally hardwired into their neurology, their physicality. It is a human birthright. We seem to have forgotten that it'll take a risk. It'll take us being willing to say, I'm going to do that. I'm going for it. Whether I know or I don't know, what we do know is that we can get there. What we do know is that by saying it, by pointing out over the bleachers like Babe Ruth used to do and say home run, he struck out a lot, but it never stopped him from saying home run. And that's what we're faced with now. And being a 6.0 leader and developing the non-binary structure of thinking that you are going to need to move through the complexities we have now. That's what we're saying is needed and possible. We can help provide.
Say that it doesn't have to be the exception, the visionary exception, as Joe was pointing out. We're saying it could be more the rule and less the exception. And even for any individual on a day-to-day basis, that kind of awareness can be more the rule and less the exception. And it's trainable, so that It's not just the one visionary in the company or the two visionaries in the company or the vision of the founder. That's all great. And it's saying that for really more of the company, that for more of the company, that can be the rule and less the exception, and it's trainable. And it's what we're all needing now collectively for the manner in which business is done. If more of the people in the leadership positions can come from that non-binary place, real transformation can happen. And it can be more the rule. Those moments of epiphany can be more the rule and less the exception.
I like what you're pointing to about it's not just the one or two visionaries or founders that bring this forward. This age that we're moving into, this society that we're moving into, and what we're seeing with employees. They want this. They don't want a job in which they're told what to do anymore because some visionary says, this is what we're doing and you need to work here. What Daniel's pointing to is everybody can live at that place. And what would that do to our society if we actually could give people, empower people with the training and the development that is needed to move the structure of mind, not just to the one or two elite people at the top, but to everybody in a company? This is potentially a way we could resolve inequality and diversity issues that we're facing right now, to actually take on the issues and challenges that face us in society right now and rise in our training and our development to a new level. We'll start to see a different company, a different business, a different economy, a different society. That's the point of Society 5.0 and why we need 6.0 leaders.
Why we need the U-Person operating system. Please say that.
And why we need the U-Person operating system.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the U-Person podcast. If you are new to the podcast, please head over to our website, theupersonproject.com, where you can subscribe to the podcast, learn more about the project, or connect with our team. You can also reach us at hello@theupersonproject.com. If you think of someone who will benefit from listening to this podcast, please do share it with them. Thank you again, and see you on the next episode of the U-Person podcast.